Look in the mirror, that face feels like the final draft of what it means to be human. But almost 2 million years before Homo sapiens existed, a different draft was already walking this earth. And it wasn't a failed attempt at making us. It was, by one measure, the most successful human species that has ever lived. Its name was Homo Erectus, and its story starts almost 2 million years ago on the plains of Africa. Homo sapiens has existed for roughly 300,000 years. Homo erectus existed for nearly 2 million. If you compressed all of human history into a single 24-hour clock, our entire existence as Homo sapiens would only occupy the final 2 minutes. Homo erectus would own almost the entire day. The last confirmed populations were still alive on the island of Java in Indonesia as recently as 108,000 to 117,000 years ago. We only know about them because of a strange discovery. In 1891, a Dutch physician named Eugène Dubois found a skull cap along the Solo River on the island of Java, with a heavy, sloping brow and a low, flattened crown. Nobody believed him at first. It wasn't until similar fossils turned up in China during the 1920s and 30s, a population known as Peking man, that scientists accepted this was a real, widespread species. And widespread doesn't even begin to describe it. Homo erectus fossils have been found across Africa, throughout China and Southeast Asia, and as far into Europe as the Caucasus region of modern-day Georgia. This was a species that adapted to woodlands, savannas, forests, and coastlines across 3 continents, through Ice Age, after Ice Age. Physically, they looked closer to us than any human species before them. Individuals ranged from around 4'9" to over 6 feet tall, weighing between roughly 40 and 68 kilograms. Brain size started around 600 to 800 cubic centimeters in early populations, but grew over time to over 1,200 cubic centimeters in some later groups, edging close to a modern adult brain. They had a flatter face, a prominent nose, thick brow ridges, and a robust low skull. Some researchers suggest those heavy brow ridges may have helped absorb impact during physical conflict, since many recovered skulls show old, healed fractures, though this remains a debated theory. Fossilized footprints found near Illoret in Kenya, made by at least 20 individuals roughly 1.5 million years ago, reveal something remarkable. Homo erectus had essentially the same walking gait as modern humans, built for covering long distances efficiently. Combined with a human-like shoulder structure allowing accurate, high-speed throwing, unlike the ape-like shoulders of earlier hominids, this species was built for pursuit. That leads to one of the biggest turning points in their story. Homo erectus became the first apex predator among early humans. Before them, early hominids were often prey. That changed completely. Animal remains found alongside their fossils in Africa include hippos, wild boar, deer, horses, and even elephants, with some Kenyan sites showing evidence of erectus preying on crocodiles. Their key hunting technique was likely persistence hunting, using long legs, efficient sweating, and endurance to chase prey for hours, reportedly capable of sustained exertion for over 5 hours without water until the animal collapsed from exhaustion or heat stress. Supporting this lifestyle was their technology. Early populations used simple, sharp-edged stone flakes for cutting. Over time, this evolved into the Acheulean hand axe, a teardrop-shaped tool worked carefully on both sides. This design remained essentially unchanged for over 1 million years, not from stagnation, but because it simply worked generation after generation across enormous stretches of geography and time. Then came fire. Homo erectus is widely credited as the first human species to control fire, with early evidence at sites like Hubifora in Kenya dating back roughly 1.5 million years. This likely began with capturing naturally occurring fires and maintaining them using slow-burning materials like dung. True fire-starting technology seems to have become common after around 400,000 years ago. Fire meant protection from predators at night, extended waking hours, and cooked food, which is easier to digest and delivers more usable energy, possibly freeing up resources for their growing brains. It likely also meant something less tangible, a gathering point that encouraged social bonding and communication. Could Homo erectus actually talk? We don't fully know. Their brains lacked some structures modern humans use for complex language, and many researchers believe they lacked the modern form of the FOXP2 gene tied to speech development. But the coordination needed for group hunting and consistent tool-making traditions across vast distances strongly strongly suggest some form of communication existed, even if closer to calls and gestures than full language. Perhaps most surprising is evidence that they cared for one another. A Homo erectus specimen from Georgia, over 1.5 million years old, had lost nearly all their teeth to age or disease, yet clearly survived for years, likely relying on others for soft food. A young individual known as Turkana Boy showed signs of a painful spinal condition, yet lived into adolescence. Another specimen shows a bone disorder that would have made walking and gathering food nearly impossible alone. None of these individuals could have survived without help. That looks like compassion, not just instinct. There's evidence of shelter building too. Sites in France and Germany, hundreds of thousands of years old, contain remains of constructed huts, some ringed with stones around fire pits, suggesting organized, long-term living, not just wandering. Their curiosity may have gone beyond survival. Homo erectus is believed to be the earliest species to intentionally collect red ochre pigment, sometimes apparently heating it to alter its color. A fossilized shell from Trinil, Indonesia, bears a deliberately engraved zigzag pattern dated to roughly 400,000 years ago, one of the oldest known examples of intentional mark-making by any human species. Whether this reflects true symbolic thought is still debated, but it hints at a mind capable of more than pure function. Their reach may have extended across open water. Stone tools on the Indonesian island of Flores suggest some population, likely Homo erectus, crossed the Lombok Strait, part of the Wallace Line, over 800,000 years ago. Whether this happened through deliberate rafts or accidental drifting during storms is genuinely contested, and newer research increasingly favors the accidental explanation. Either way, it shows a species reaching places that should have been off limits. The story isn't purely triumphant. Skulls found in India with old wounds hint at violence, possibly between rival groups. Marks on bones at a few sites have even led some researchers to speculate about cannibalism, though critics argue those marks more likely came from scavenging hyenas. It remains an unresolved debate, so if Homo erectus was this adaptable, spread across 3 continents, surviving ice age after ice age, why isn't there a single one left today? The answer isn't a war or a single disaster. It's climate change playing out over a very long time. Researchers studying the fossil and climate record found that shortly before Homo erectus vanished, their preferred open woodland habitat shrank and fragmented dramatically. When a species' territory breaks into smaller, isolated patches, it enters what ecologists call an extinction vortex, a slow, downward spiral that's hard to escape. Their final refuge was Java, which stayed more climatically stable than the mainland for a long time. But eventually, as the last glacial period intensified, Java's open woodlands gave way to dense rainforest, an environment nothing like what their hunting strategies and stone tools, largely unchanged for hundreds of thousands of years, were built for. It's worth saying clearly that in many regions, Homo erectus likely didn't disappear into nothing. Many researchers believe distinct populations gradually evolved into later species, including Homo heidelbergensis, a lineage that eventually contributed to both the Neanderthals and, further down the line, to us. So the next time you walk, run, cook a meal over fire, or feel the pull to help someone who can't fully help themselves, remember this: you're echoing behaviors a species pioneered almost 2 million years before you were born. Homo erectus wasn't a primitive stepping stone on the way to something better. For the overwhelming majority of human history, they simply were the human, adaptable enough to outlast nearly every environment this planet could throw at them. And maybe that's the part of this story worth sitting with the longest. 2 million years of success still wasn't a guarantee of forever. The world kept changing around them, slowly, patiently, until the version of the world they knew how to survive in simply didn't exist anymore. Success was never about being the strongest species in the room. It was about whether you could keep adapting when everything around you eventually shifted. And that question didn't end with Homo erectus. It's still being asked today.